What's up guys, I got a brand new video for you today, and today we're gonna take a look at the brand spanking new X100V. Now I've been shooting with this camera for about a week now. I did some street photography with it, I did some portrait photography with it, and I also brought it with me to some jobs where I was DPing on a music video. So I got a few behind the scenes pictures from that. But right off the bat, I just wanna say that Fuji didn't seem to hold anything back on this camera, which is why I think I'm gonna switch it out with this camera and shoot the rest of the talking head stuff on this bad boy. So you're probably like, no man, don't shoot video on the X100. It's never looked good. Well, that changes with this camera because it can now shoot 4K up to 30 FPS, 10-bit 422 out of the HDMI port, and that's what I'm doing right now, recording into the Ninja 5. Okay, jumping into the specs, it won't surprise many of you that this is using the same 26 megapixel X-Trans4 sensor found in all of the newer cameras, the X-T3, the X-T30, the X Pro 3. It's also got the same quad-core processor. I don't know how they crammed it into this tiny camera, but they've also designed the new 23mm f2, and it's looking crispy. So let's rip through these specs because there's a lot to cover, a ton of new stuff to cover on this camera. But as I mentioned before, 26 megapixel X-Trans4 sensor, 425 AF points, 3.69 million dot OLED EVF. This is that hybrid optical electronic viewfinder, which now runs at 100 frames per second at 0.66 magnification. It also has a new tilting touchscreen that's 1.62 million dots. Way better than the X100F, that was only 1.04 million dots. It's got a slightly bigger grip, USB-C for charging, file transfer, headphone jack, 2.5mm jack also for remote and mic input, and it also has micro HDMI. It now has all metal neural dials which all match, and it looks really, really nice. They're also saying that you can autofocus in low light now down to -5 EV. It now can shoot up to 11 frames per second mechanical shutter. It also has the new sports finder mode, so you can shoot 30 frames per second blackout free with a 1.25 times crop. The buffer can't really handle that many shots, but it can do it. This camera also has a leaf shutter, which can go up to 1/4000th of a second. That's the max that this leaf shutter can do, but it does have a 4-stop built-in ND filter, which helps with that. Now let's get into the video specs, because these are impressive. Internal 4K 8-bit 420, up to 200 megabits per second. It can do that for 10 minutes at a time, or you can do 4K 10-bit 422 through the HDMI port, and that's unlimited as long as you have proper hard drives for that recording. Does 1080p, 24 frames, 30 frames, 60 frames, up to 15 minutes. It can also do 120 frames per second slow-mo in 1080p, but only for 6 minutes. It has one UHS 1 SD card slot in the bottom, same NPW 126 battery. It's got face and IAF in video, as well as continuous shooting, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth for controlling the camera with your phone, and transferring images. But I'm done. That's enough about the specs. So many of you know that I own the X100F. I'll put a link to that review. It's a great little camera, still awesome camera, but this X100V steps things up in a huge way. And especially since this is a pre-production unit, the camera is like the most refined Fuji camera I think I've ever used. It's all the little subtle changes they made. It's obviously a big chunk of metal, like always. It's a very solid camera. They matched all the neural dials now, so they're all really nice. It has a cohesive look to match the rest of the body. The body hasn't really had a lot of changes. It kind of looks unchanged from first glance, but the grip is slightly thicker, and they've removed the D-pad. So it's kind of a trend they've been doing with all their cameras lately. So the X-T30, they took the D-pad off of, as well as the X Pro 3. Honestly, I don't hate it. It's not a big deal. I mean, it was kind of nice to have the quick access to the D-pad, but now you just use the joystick to get around. It's not that big of a deal. It kind of gives more room for your thumb to hold the camera. So one really nice change is the pop-up ISO dial. I love it. It's amazing. It's such a simple change, but it's so much better than trying to hold it up and change it against the spring. Now you just pop it up, change your ISO, pop it back down, and you're done. Obviously, you can also set it to the C mode, which allows you to change ISO from the front command dial. And of course, we need to talk about the new flip screen. It's a touch screen. It's really nice. It's 1.62 million dots, super bright, super sharp. Some people might prefer to not have a flip out screen and go back to the old style, but I think it's really nice being able to flip the screen up and shoot from the hip, bring the camera down a little bit more. It kind of makes you look, less creepy if you're trying to do street photography, I guess, but it also helps if you're trying to shoot above your head as well. And the last thing, which I saw a lot of people bickering about on Fuji Rumors when the leaks came out, was that there was no mention of weather sealing. So I just want to confirm that there actually is weather sealing on this camera. At least that's what I was told. I didn't see a ton of rubber gaskets, but there's a lot of plastic on the inside of the doors now that have kind of a tongue and groove mesh, so that when you close the door, it actually seals the port up pretty well. But it doesn't come weather sealed from the factory, right? When you get it out of the box, you actually need to screw a front adapter ring on the front. It's called an AR X100 adapter ring. And this is going to give you threads to screw on an actual UV filter. So once you put on the UV filter, I guess it's properly sealed now. All right, so let's jump into autofocus because there's a few changes here. I didn't find it to focus any faster than the previous X100F, to be honest, but I did find it was quite a bit more accurate and hunted less. And in the menu, they've added all the custom autofocus settings for photos and video. And now there's also the continuous face detection and eye autofocus capabilities, both in photo and video. And they've also improved the low light face detection autofocus down to -5 EV, which is awesome. So for this continuous autofocus test, I have the camera set to 11 frames per second, mechanical shutter, and for custom autofocus settings, I have it set to multi-purpose. Now basically, I'm just going to indicate with a little green light or red light when it goes in and out of focus. Now here's something I noticed when I was doing continuous autofocus tests. You can see here, it's doing a pretty good job, but if you're using the internal mic, you'll actually pick up the motor noise. As for image quality, the camera's looking great. It's the same type of image quality you get from all the same Fuji cameras with this sensor. The only difference is this lens is built in, and the lens has been redesigned. It's now quite a bit sharper, especially wide open at f2. And I remember mentioning that I wasn't overly impressed with how sharp the lens was on the X100F wide open, and this is way better. And it's also nice to see the inclusion of that new classic negative film simulation, which I love. The options in the menu to take more control of your image, so you can do stuff like tone curve and clarity. And I'm sure over the course of this video, you've seen a lot of test images that I shot in classic negative, and I just did that because I figured a lot of people would want to see that. All right, I have nothing bad to say about this camera. I mean, maybe it would have been nice to come with a charger, but that's not a huge deal breaker. It's kind of a do-it-all camera, which I was not expecting. They made a lot of different changes on the X Pro 3, which they didn't do on this camera, which is good. So what you've been watching is all the talking head stuff on this camera. Let me know how it looks. It's pretty amazing considering it's coming from a small camera like this. Anyway, the release date is in March 2020. I don't know when the pre-orders will be up, so I'll put links in the description to that so we can kind of figure out when that happens. The price isn't that bad either. It's going to come in at around $13.99 US and $17.99 Canadian. Anyway, that's it for this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you disliked this video, give it a thumbs down twice. Don't forget to hit that notification bell. See you guys in the next one. I think we got through it all. I hope that this face detection's working. I hope we don't have a whole bunch of pulsing in the background. Let me know if you guys want me to make a video on all the settings that I have set this camera up to, because I think it's working pretty good. And most of these settings would actually work really well for any Fuji camera. This isn't something you see every day. A teleprompter attached to an X100F. Not bad. Not bad. All right, we're done here.